Venezuela, the High Commission for the Defense, the Essequibo, has been set up, an entity that will be in charge of utilizing the popular mandate in favor of vindicating the country's historical rights over this territory. In Palestine, discriminate bombing by Israeli aircraft continues against civilian targets in all areas of the Gaza Strip, and the death toll says 17,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children. In United Arab Emirates, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres demanded greater action in phasing out fossil fuels during his speech at the COP28 Climate Summit. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Rosabal from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, the High Commission for the Defense of the Essequibo has been set up, an entity that will be in charge of utilizing the popular mandate in favor of vindicating the country's historical rights over this territory. The event was presided over by the Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, and was also attended by the high-level authority of the Venezuelan government. During the ceremony, Rodriguez remarked the illegal nature of the Paris Arbitration Award and reaffirmed that the solution to the territorial controversy must be in accordance with the Geneva Agreement. The Vice President explained that once the Commission is in place, it will define the methodology for the Venezuelan proposal at the meeting between Venezuela President Nicolás Maduro and his Guyanese counterpart, Efraín Ali, to be held in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines on Thursday.
Therefore, we as the High Commission, once in place, are going to proceed to define the methodology to immediately consult on what should be the Venezuelan proposal at the meeting to be held this Thursday in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. From Venezuela, we have welcomed CARICOM and CELAC's efforts and those of President Lula, Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves and Prime Minister Skerry, who have joined their endeavors so that Venezuela's request for a direct negotiation with Guyana be possible this Thursday. We are grateful that this request has been heard. That is the way of peace, the way of neighborly negotiations that should prevail between neighboring countries.
The Vice President emphasized that the High Commission for the Defense of the Essequibo has a mission to consult all sectors of national life to develop policies in favor of reaffirming Venezuela's historical rights over the disputed area.
This High Commission has been designated precisely for the broadest consultations at the national level with all the sectors of national life that make and develop policies in the economic, political, social and cultural spheres. The entire national life, the national academies, must also be consulted by this High Commission for the Defense of the Guyana Essequibo. We know our history, and the consultative referendum of December 3rd allowed our country to turn it into a great school about our historical rights, our legal and judicial rights, irrefutable and unquestionable rights on the Guyana Essequibo.
Rodriguez also affirmed that the seizure of the Essequibo from Venezuela was a result of the historical expansion of the Monroe Doctrine over the region and reiterated that Venezuela has all the evidence of its rights over the area.
We know well how the plunder occurred as a result of the empires of the time, and also as a result of the Monroe Doctrine, which one day before the consultative referendum was turning exactly 200 years. The Monroe Doctrine was imposed on the rules that fixed the fraud in 1997 in the Washington Treaty to consummate 2 years later the fraudulent sentence, the fraudulent award of 1999 that fixed spurious limits on our territory, pretending to dispossess a wide Venezuelan area, the Essequibo. The Guyana Essequibo belongs to Venezuela. Since its birth, it belongs to Venezuela, long before it was even an administrative unit of the Spanish Crown. There is no doubt of Venezuela's title to this territory.
The executive vice president also stressed that the Bolivarian Republic will stick to the mandate to defend its seas and announced the protection of Guyana to dispose of water spanning of the limitation.
This mandate also includes consolidating the position of Venezuela in the defense of the seas of the territorial sea that has yet to be delimited and that has constituted one of the most serious recent violations by the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, which is unilaterally using a sea that has yet to be bounded, and that has been one of the most important reasons that triggered the consultation that took place on December 3rd. The defense of our seas, by all means, in accordance with the law, in accordance with our constitution, in accordance with international law. It is wrong for Guyana to be granting licenses. It is wrong for Guyana to be authorizing the exploitation of a sea area that has yet to be delimited without the authorization of Venezuela and to do so unilaterally.
The 8th Extraordinary Congress of Government Planning Tabaré Vázquez ended this Sunday in Uruguay in honor of the nation's late former president. The meeting started last Friday with a tribute to the deceased president, followed by the Commission's debate on issues related to economic policy, human rights, health education, and defense. The member of Uruguay's left-wing coalition ratified the presidential candidacies of Carolina Cosset, Yamondu Orsi, Mario Vergara, and Andrés Lima, who will run in an internal election to choose the sole presidential candidate. Today we seek to build a new political moment. We enter the final working stage to win the next election for the national government, parliament, and the largest number of departmental administrations. We need the frontier amply to recuperate the government for the people, which is the challenge we put before our people, that the governments be again at the service of the large national majorities. In Brazil, students from several countries graduated in the fields of cooperativism and agroecology management from the Hugo Chavez International class. The event was attended by the Vice Minister for the Communes of Venezuela, Lice Altuve, and several leaders of the popular movements of the country. Also present were the students from Argentina who received classes at the Josué de Castro Institute of the Landless Rural Workers Movement in southern Brazil. This is a project of the social movement whose objective is to communicate and popularize the agroecological production model in the region. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you find news in different formats, dates, and more. Other studies coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. In Palestine, dozens of civilians were killed and others injured, mostly children and women, in the ongoing Israeli shelling targeting different locations in the besieged Gaza Strip. Israeli warplanes shelled the home of the Al-Karam family in Deir al-Balah city in central Gaza, killing and wounded several civilians. Several other civilians were injured in Israeli airstrikes targeting the house of the El family, also in Deir al-Balah. Israeli jets also shelled Kibbutz al-Adas to the east and Rafah Nusayrat refugee camp in the central strip. In Khan Yunis in the southern strip, several people were killed and others wounded by Israeli snipers' bullets. In Lebanon, the Washington Post investigation reports that Israeli Defense Forces used U.S. supply-wide phosphorus ammunition in their attacks in October. According to the newspaper, the production codes found on the shells matched the nomenclature used by the U.S. military to catalog domestically manufactured munitions. These are in particular shells used by the IDF against the town of Daira in what, according to Amnesty International, was an indiscriminate attack that injured at least 9 civilians and damaged civilian property. Moreover, the U.S. origin of the munitions was verified by the human rights organizations. Tirana Hassan, executive director of Human Rights Watch, said that the fact that U.S.-made white phosphorus is being used by Israel in southern Lebanon has to be of great concern to U.S. officials. She added that in light of this fact, the U.S. Congress should reconsider Washington's military aid to Tel Aviv. Senior representatives of several nations expressed their disappointment with the veto imposed by the United States and the UN Security Council on the draft resolution calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. The vote in favor of the resolution on Saturday, December 9th, was approved by 13 of the 15 members of the UN Security Council, with the United Kingdom abstaining. In this regard, the High Representative of the European Union, Josep Borrell, regretted the U.S. veto, assuring that the initiative presented by the United Arab Emirates was promoted by the majority of the European nations. In this regard, the spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Minister Nasser Kanani denounced the failure of the Security Council to fulfill its duty to maintain international peace and security. Russia's Central Election Commission informed that the country's presidential elections will also be held in any territories that would adhere to the country. The Electoral Commission noted that the decision was unanimous and indicated that all citizens of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions, as well as in the Crimean Peninsula, will have the right to participate in the elections. The authorities assured that in case of any conflict in any of the region, the current legislation would allow the Commission to postpone the voting in certain areas to a later date. They also informed that the presidential elections are expected to be held on March 17, 2024.
Who's for this draft decree? Please vote. Who's for it? Who's against it? Who's abstained? It has been adopted unanimously. Colleagues, thank you all so much. The question is not secondary, which cannot be passed. This issue is important for the whole country because it determines a lot in our lives. Colleagues, thank you all very much.
We have a second job break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code and screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Gaza News cover actual Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final job break, don't go away. Welcome back. During his speech at the COP28 Climate Summit in the United Arab Emirates, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres demanded greater action in phasing out fossil fuels. Guterres reiterated that the elimination of the use of fossil fuels could be carried out according to each country's consumption demands and requirements. This measure has been on the UN agenda for several decades, since fossil fuels are responsible for the production of the largest amount of greenhouse gases. During the Climate Summit, members are proposing to reduce fossil fuels to become emission neutral by 2050.
Time to seek compromise for solutions without compromising on the science or compromising on the need for the highest ambition. In our fractured and divided world, COP28 can show that multilateralism remains our best hope to tackle global challenges. Specifically, I ask parties to ensure maximum ambition on two fronts. First, ambition on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Second, ambition on delivering climate justice. But it is essential that the global stocktake recognises the need to phase out all fossil fuels on a time frame consistent with the 1.5 degree limit, and to accelerate a just, equitable and orderly energy transition for all. A transition that takes into account the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in light of national circumstances, not to reduce ambition, but to combine ambition and equity.
In United Arab Emirates, European Commissioner's climate envoy Wop Hoestra said he was disappointed by the draft text that agrees on environmental goals at the UN Climate Summit in Dubai on Monday. A new draft released Monday afternoon of what is known as the Global Stocktake, the part of the talk that assesses where the world stands on its climate goals and how it can achieve them, calling countries to reduce fossil fuel consumption and production in a fair, orderly, and equitable manner. The publication prompted adjustments by the government envoys and insightful analysis by advocacy groups. Small island nations, some of the most vulnerable places in the world of rising temperatures and seas, criticized the draft and were trying to decide their options. Final COP decisions have to be by consensus, and objections could still undermine the activists and said the fear that possible objection from fossil fuel countries such as Saudi Arabia will have watered down the text.
I cannot hide the fact from you that the text as it now stands is disappointing. It is lengthy, we're still looking into all the various elements, and yes, there are a couple of good things in there, but overall it is clearly insufficient and not adequate to addressing the problem we are here to address. And that is not because just we want it, the Minister or I want it, or the Europeans want it, because scientists are crystal clear about what is needed. And on the top of that list is phasing out fossil fuel, because there is a direct causality between doing that and making sure we get the Earth, we get people out of harm's way. So we have to continue the conversation, but this text contains elements that we simply cannot accept.
COP28 in the Arab Emirates moved towards final resolutions, and the parties negotiators discussed the balance of commitment made to mitigate and adapt to climate change. From the Vibe, our team brings us the details.
Countries of capitalism do not provide sufficient resources for the transition or reparation, and the developing countries insist that they depend on hydrocarbons for their development.
The reality is that the most visionary results are the only way for all governments to come out of Dubai with a victory under their belt. One thing is certain: I win, you lose is a recipe for collective failure. Ultimately, it is the security of 8 billion people that is at stake.
Negotiators discuss whether the way forward is to abandon fossil fuels as soon as possible or to reduce consumption. The Global South is demanding that the North finance the transition and pay for the impacts it suffers from the global warming caused by the rich countries. There is talk of common but differentiated responsibilities.
It is justice. They have to pay what they owe in the end. So we ask that the countries of the Global North, which are the biggest producers, stop emissions now, and can lead this process by putting money so that the countries of the Global South can start this transition more slowly, because it would take longer, because we don't have the resources to do it.
In the United States, the country that emits the most greenhouse gases, the government of Joe Biden is trying in Congress to send $60 billion in military resources to Ukraine and $10 billion to Israel. And the COP is denouncing its lack of contributions to the fight against climate change.
The responsibility has been there since we have practically colonized all the lands everywhere and extract all these resources. This conference was historic because we had the loss and damage fund actually pass, and many of the countries in the Global North promised millions and millions of dollars. But when you think about financing just a global transition, that's throwing pennies into a piggy bank. That's just not going to do any good. We need about $100 billion to finance this global transition, and the United States only promised about $17.5 million, compared to other countries in the Global North that have pledged $100 million.
The impacts of pollution are not only affecting the atmosphere. The U.S. oil companies ExxonMobil and Shell are among the main responsible for the destruction of the Niger River in the rural village where Friday Nabani lives in Nigeria.
We demand that this conference provide funding for adaptation. We demand that the form of loss and damage be higher, not just the billion that the millionaires are talking about. We expect that around 400 billion can be allocated to all the vulnerable community who have been impacted by climate change, who live in floods, who live in disasters, who have become climate refugees on their own land.
The new feature of COP28 was the multipolarity and the weight of the Global South in achieving the approval of the Loss and Damage Fund through the G77 plus China bloc.
The most important thing, in my opinion, is the political recognition that losses and damages exist and require financing because for many years, although it seems incredible now, this was discussed. Developed countries say that this was adaptation and it was covered by adaptation. In other words, they did not give it a personality of its own. That's the glass half full. The glass half empty is that in reality, the needs for financing the losses and damages are in the order of billions for the countries that suffer.
For the moment, there is no solution in sight. Everyone knows that the critical barrier of a 1.5 degrees increase in temperature will be surpassed. The planet is already 1.3 degrees above pre-industrial levels, and according to the United Nations, the probability of achieving the objective is reduced to 14%.
Ignacio Lemus y Julia Nassif para Telesur. Los Emiratos.
In Chile, a new heat wave affected the central zone of the country this weekend, where temperatures reached up to 40 degrees Celsius. According to information issued by the Meteorological Office, it was predicted that high temperatures could trigger new forest fires in January. In this sense, the Chilean government announced the purchase of specialized machinery and light aircraft, as well as the operation for early warning, which have already been in operation this weekend. Today, 3 people suspected of starting some of the fires that affected the towns of Limache and Marga Marga have been arrested. Also, a study by the National Forestry Corporation revealed that at least 1/3 of the fires were intentional. And we have come to the end of this brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscasts and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Ana Rosabal. Thank you for watching.